What is evil? Is it tangible? Can you see it? Can you smell it? Is it in the air? If you are a witness to it, and you are not the victim, then are you an accomplice? Can it be found within the DNA hiding behind chromosomes? In 2017, during February, at a park in Grove City, 10 miles southwest of Columbus, a body was found. The body of 21-year-old Reagan Tokes, an Ohio State University student with 2 gunshot wounds to the head. Reagan Tokes was raped and killed. The 4-year psychology major was due to graduate in May of 2017. Miss Tokes was described as vibrant, loving young woman who embraced life, had a positive impact on people, was enthusiastic about everything, and brought laughter and joy to all who knew her. This is the story of justice. Justice for a daughter, a sister, a student, a friend, a victim, an angel. This is the story of justice for Reagan Tokes.
We're getting new details about what evidence prosecutors will present to a jury in the murder trial of OSU student Reagan Tokes. NBC4's Elise Chingari joins us with newly released video of Tokes' accused killer. She's at the Watch for Alert desk.
Mark, Brian Golsby faces rape, kidnapping, and murder charges. For the first time, we are getting a look at surveillance video prosecutors say placed him in the area of the OSU campus hours before Reagan Tokes was killed. Now, these images of Golsby were taken by security cameras on a COTA bus on February 8th. You can see Golsby exiting the bus around the campus area. 21-year-old OSU student Reagan Tokes vanished later that evening after leaving her job in the Short North. Investigators say another video from COTA shows Golsby being dropped off in German Village earlier in the week. This was minutes before a woman was robbed and pistol whipped on Mohawk Street. Police say Golsby was behind that attack and at least 6 others in German Village. Was wearing an ankle monitor when he kidnapped and killed 21-year-old student Reagan Tokes. Tokes' body was discovered in Grove City Park the day after she vanished. The coroner says she was raped and then shot twice in the head. Reagan Tokes was a psychology major set to graduate from OSU this past Sunday. Her family accepted an honorary degree on her behalf. At the Watch for Alert desk, Elise Chingari, NBC4.
Jurors in the Brian Golsby murder trial, hearing from the first witness to take the stand, detailing the moment that he found the body of that OSU student. Good evening. Thank you for staying with us tonight at 6. I'm Mike Jackson.
I'm Colleen Marshall. Jurors began their day outside the courtroom. They were taken to the locations where investigators say Brian Golsby, a convicted felon, kidnapped, raped, and murdered the Ohio State student. Prosecutors say today's jury view will help show the terror that Reagan Tokes endured on the night that she disappeared outside her job in the Short North.
NBC4's Ted Hart has been following this case for more than a year. Ted was in court for day 2 of the testimony. Ted?
Mike, prosecutors wanted the jurors to see the crime scenes firsthand, to get some perspective of these locations that they will hear so much about during testimony. The first stop for the jury this morning was Bodega, the restaurant in the Short North where Reagan Tokes worked. Prosecutors wanted jurors to see where they say Tokes was kidnapped while walking back to her car after getting off her shift. Jurors were also shown the locations of 2 ATM machines where investigators say Brian Golsby forced Tokes to try to withdraw money. They stopped at the alley in Marion Village where prosecutors believe Reagan Tokes was raped, and Scioto Grove Metro Park where Tokes' body was found. A makeshift memorial was covered with a tarp during the jury's visit to the site.
Solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give shall be the truth and nothing but the truth.
Back in the courtroom, prosecutors called the witnesses who were first on the scene when the body was discovered. Also taking the stand were several of Reagan Tokes' roommates who described filing a missing persons report after realizing Reagan had not come home. And an undercover Grove City detective described finding the cigarette butt and burn marks inside Reagan Tokes' car. Prosecutors say DNA from the cigarette butt matches Brian Golsby. The detective also described the initial interview with Brian Golsby after his arrest.
First couple hours, he told us that he had taken Reagan into a car, had committed a robbery of her. He needed money. He took her to some ATMs, and then he said he left her naked in a field during a snowstorm.
And the detective said sometime later in that interview process, Brian Golsby started talking about a second person being involved, someone named TJ. The detective says they did investigate and found no TJ. The trial resumes tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. Local for you in Columbus, Ted Hart, NBC4.
Me and the Notification Gang would like to invite everybody to come join us Monday through Thursday, 9:20 to 10 o'clock for morning coffee, where we discuss the events of the prior day and also just talk mess about stuff. See you then.
New at 5, Brian Golsby's murder trial could go to the jury as soon as tomorrow. The prosecution wrapped up its case just a few hours ago. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Ellie Merritt.
I'm Mike Jackson. Mark Taylor has the evening off. 2 witnesses testified today that Golsby confessed to murdering Reagan Tokes.
NBC4's Ted Hardy is live tonight at the courthouse with our continuing coverage. Ted?
Yeah, as the trial entered its second week today, jurors heard from several forensic scientists about DNA evidence linking Brian Golsby to both the victim and her car, but the most compelling testimony came this afternoon with the description of a jailhouse confession. Brittney Stepp says she thought of Brian Golsby as a brother. Her kids, she said, considered Golsby their uncle. She said she never knew him to be violent or abusive, and said while he was in jail, she asked him repeatedly whether he had committed the crimes, and he said no, until last summer.
He said, "I'm sorry, I got scared." I said, "Did you do it?" And he shook his head, yes. I asked him why he did what he did. And I said, "Please don't tell me that you really did this." And that's when he admitted to me of doing what he did.
Tell us what he said.
He said that he kidnapped her, he robbed her, he raped her, and then he shot her at the park.
Defense attorneys are working to avoid the death penalty and under cross-examination questioned Brittney Stepp about Golsby's demeanor.
And when Mr. Golsby made these statements to you, you agree he said he was scared and didn't know what to do and he was sorry?
Yes, he did say that.
And he was crying when he gave you those answers, correct?
Yes, he had tears in his eyes.
So the prosecution rested its case this afternoon. The defense attorney says it plans to call no witnesses. Brian Golsby waived his right to testify in his own defense. So closing arguments will be tomorrow morning, after which jurors will then begin their deliberations. Local for you in Columbus, Ted Hart, NBC4.
The fate of accused killer Brian Golsby now rests in the hands of a jury.
After 5 days of testimony, the jury heard closing arguments this morning and deliberated for the rest of the day. They just finished up for the day and will return tomorrow. Golsby, charged with the kidnapping, rape, and murder of former Ohio State student Reagan Tokes. NBC4's Ted Hart has been in the courtroom since the very beginning. He's live tonight with more on the closing arguments from both sides here, Ted.
Yeah, and Mark, in their final pitch to jurors, prosecutors tried to argue that this is a slam dunk case for them. Defense attorneys, though, told the jurors to take their time and to carefully examine all of the elements of each of the charges. In her closing argument, Brian Golsby's attorney, Diane Menashe, conceded that Brian Golsby committed the crimes, and that when he described to detectives the murder being committed by another person named TJ, he was in fact describing what he did.
We have done nothing to present to you a theory of TJ, because Brian is TJ.
The defense strategy is to avoid the death penalty. So what Menashe argued was that Golsby did not plan to kill Reagan Tokes, but that he got scared and panicked.
The state would have you believe that this guy is capable of prior calculation and design. And with all due respect to Mr. Golsby, if Mr. Golsby were that smart, he wouldn't have been wearing a GPS monitor while he's committing crimes.
Prosecutors, though, hammered away at the mountain of evidence against Golsby.
His DNA everywhere.
His DNA on the victim, Reagan Tokes. DNA on the cigarette butt in her car. Reagan Tokes' DNA on the barrel of the gun from being shot at point-blank range. Gunshot residue on Brian Golsby's sweatshirt, and testimony that Golsby confessed during jailhouse conversations. Assistant Prosecutor James Lowe said the murder was the culmination of a continuing course of conduct that night.
We'd agreed he's not smart, but he's smart enough to plan. He's smart enough to know that if Reagan Tokes lives, she's going to come into court and point to him and say, that's the man who raped me. That's the man who robbed me.
And the jury has a total of 9 counts to consider. They did just wrap up for the day about 20 minutes ago. They will be sequestered in a local hotel overnight and will resume deliberations tomorrow morning. Local for you in Columbus, Ted Hart, NBC4.
Verdict. We, the jury in this case, being duly impaneled and sworn, find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt as to count 1 of the indictment for aggravated murder. Specification 1. Jury finds him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt with the specification of aggravated robbery.
Victim in this case, Reagan Tokes, is everybody's sister, everybody's female relative, and I think as Ms. Roush said in her closing argument, it's every woman's worst nightmare. And I think we saw that unfold in here the last 2 weeks. And I think that's why you all have such an interest in it. The public has such an interest in it.
You said they're not, the defendants not listening. Did you have a chance to talk to them after the verdict?
Yes.
How are they? How are they doing right now?
Well, as you know, today is Reagan Tokes' 23rd birthday. And I think they had that in the back of their minds. And I think they, as you could see from their reaction in the courtroom, were pleased with the verdict.
This is what Reagan would want us to do, and we know it is the right thing to do to honor her memory best.
An emotional journey, a family now embracing a new path. Today, the Reagan Tokes Act officially unveiled by lawmakers. Good evening. Thank you for staying with us tonight at 6. I'm Mike Jackson.
And I'm Ellie Merritt. Colleen has the evening off. The parents of Reagan Tokes stood bravely next to lawmakers presenting this new legislation today. NBC4's Ted Hart has an in-depth look at how this act will change the way law enforcement monitors criminals.
But first, Matt Edwards sits down with Toby and Lisa Tokes, a grieving father and mother, as they push for justice and closure.
Away from the spotlight, Lisa and Toby Tokes have been hard at work for months to do everything in their power to help prevent other families from enduring tragedies similar to theirs. But publicly, we have not heard from Reagan's parents until today. Lisa and Toby Tokes have come to accept that the pain they've endured following their daughter's murder will last a lifetime.
It's just, devastating as parents. You never get over it. It never goes away for us or any other member of our family. It's always there. It's always with you.
Lisa spoke publicly today for the first time since her oldest daughter was abducted and murdered in February. It was an emotional day for the family as the Reagan Tokes Act was introduced.
What was taken away from us, something positive had to come from it. And God finds ways to do good in all things, even evil.
There was no choice except we had to act immediately.
Reagan was just 21 years old, a senior psychology major at Ohio State, and her parents' efforts to prevent others from her same fate is an apparent trait that runs in the family.
She just cared about everyone. It didn't matter who you were, where you came from, what you were like. She was always there for everyone.
She would want us doing this at this point. She would want us trying to make something positive from this terrible tragedy. She just had such a kind, loving spirit.
And Reagan's parents, with seemingly endless adjectives to describe her today as a young woman, her father saying she was all the things a parent hopes for in their child. NBC4's Ted Hart attended today's presentation of the Reagan Tokes Act. He has more on exactly what this legislation is. Ted?
Well, and the Tokes family has embraced this legislative effort, and they believe that the proposal goes right really to the heart of what went wrong with the release from prison of accused killer Brian Golsby.
And it is because of this love that we have for our daughter we stand before you.
Lisa Tokes said supporting legislative change in the wake of her daughter's violent death is the right thing to do. Brian Golsby, a repeat offender, had been released from prison last November despite his violent history and dozens of prison infractions while behind bars.
They can identify people who are likely to reoffend. Their hands are tied. They can't do anything about some of these people.
Golsby is also charged with committing a half-dozen armed robberies in the German village area in the weeks leading up to the murder of Reagan Tokes. Golsby was required to wear a GPS ankle monitor, but lawmakers say his movements were not restricted, and because of his violent past, private re-entry programs rejected him. The Reagan Tokes Act would seek to keep unreformed violent offenders in prison longer, and then require more intense electronic monitoring upon their release.
It was preventable, and if the correct parameters would have been in place and acted upon in a timely manner, we might not be standing before you today advocating for change.
And this bill has bipartisan support at this point, and the sponsors say they hope to move it along as quickly as possible. Live at the State House, Ted Hart, NBC4.
Thank you, Ted. We followed the case of Reagan Tokes' accused killer very closely. Brian Golsby is now facing the death penalty for the death of the 21-year-old student. Investigators say Brian Golsby kidnapped Tokes in February. She was leaving her job in the short north. Her body found the next day at the Cider Grove Metro Park. Golsby has pled not guilty to all charges against him.
I hear misguided souls say rape is about sex. It isn't. It's about power, domination, humiliation. It's about causing a victim to feel like they have no control, while the perpetrator of the act has complete control. It's a very deeply rooted mental illness, one that must be monitored and dealt with sternly. If I had my way, rapists after serving their prison term would have to be admitted into a hospital. These people are sick and demons are on them. We must not allow citizens to continue to fall victim to the evil machinations of these perverted souls. How many must me too, till we make punishments hard enough to deter this evil? If you like this video, please hit the like and subscribe button. If you would like to help dictate the direction that this channel takes, please leave a comment. All comments are appreciated, whether positive or negative. Thank you very much and enjoy your day. And remember, positive thoughts cause for positive things to happen. Let's get it.